Well, hey there! Welcome to my saving and loading in GameMaker Studio 2 video. This video covers all the basics of saving and loading, so not just saving your game to a file and loading it, but having multiple save files, and just as importantly, being able to save all the different rooms in your game, and making sure whenever you move between your rooms and your levels, your progress persists through each one. The basis of this saving and loading system has been done both by Sean Spalding and Game Maker Station, Matharoo, and probably a few other people, but those are the two channels that I learned this stuff from. The main reason I wanted to make a separate video is because I wanted to have a video out there that showed people how to save individual rooms, and it basically just builds on that system a little bit, and it's always good to have more than one person teaching something. That way you can, one person's method might stick better with you. So anyways, those channels are awesome. Definitely check them out. I'll put them in the description. If you're here, I'm sure you've watched videos by both of them. But anyways, this first video is going to focus on saving and loading the individual rooms, and in the second video we're going to focus on the actual saving system, like saving and loading files, and saving multiple different save files. And don't worry, the second video comes out at the same time the first one does. The only reason they're two different videos is because my editing software was getting angry. Oh right, and OBS got a little angry too. So only for these two videos, pardon the kind of crusty footage. I just don't have the time to go back and re-record, so sorry about that. Anyways, if this video helps you out, do the like, do the subscribe, and now do the make the game. Okay, good luck. Okay, so first just a quick demonstration of some of the stuff that we can do with this saving and loading system. One of the most important things with this video is moving in between rooms and making sure just going between room saves, not even just saving to a file and being able to load the game up again. So I've got three things going on here. We got coins, where if I walk into them, I pick them up, and you see on the top left, the counter goes up. I have these crates that the character can push around, and then we have some random items that we can pick up. So pick up an ice cream, maybe a hedgehog, and maybe some hedgehog food. And obviously what we want is whenever we walk out of the room, we want to be able to walk back in and have everything be exactly how we left it. Now you might be achieving this with room persistence, which in my experience normally works up until you want to actually be able to save your game, and it's big enough to warrant having a save system. And that normally means you have to make a save system that can save everything in your rooms, and if you have that, then you don't really need room persistence. Persistent rooms also take up a little bit of memory. Probably wouldn't be that big of a deal for a lot of games, but basically this system just handles all that anyways and sets us up for actual saving. So on to our actual saving. So we know that we can move between rooms now, and whenever we go back and forth between them, whenever we show back up, everything is how we left it, right? I also have it set up to where I can save 3 different files. If I press 1, 2, or 3, it'll save to one of 3 different files. And then if I press 4, 5, or 6, it'll load file 1, 2, 3. Obviously not how you'd want to do it in your game, but this is just for testing purposes. So if I press 1, I now have a save file 1, and I can walk out of the room, do some other stuff, move some things around, pick up these other items, and if I press the button to load save file 1, I've loaded it, and all my progress has been reset to where it was. So now I can do this stuff again, save to file 2, I just press 2, walk out, go into room 3, and I can load file 2, and I can load file 1. And the way that we save all these different instances and pieces of data, you'll be able to save anything in your game. So, what are we waiting for? Let's get started. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we need to make a new object. So I'm going to right click, go to create, down to object, and I'm just going to call this obj underscore save load. Okay, this is going to be a persistent object that helps us keep track of what's been happening in the rooms and how we need to load them, and then how we need to save and load the game. So because this object needs to be everywhere, we're going to set it to persistent, and now we're ready to start working on it. The first thing I'm going to do is add my create event, and then I'm actually going to put some kind of mock-up type stuff in here. Just some stuff that we can actually save in our game. And for the sake of this video, I'm just going to kind of pretend that you might probably already have some stuff set up. Maybe you watched my item inventory video, where you would have an item inventory stored in a variable, whether it's a struct or an array or something like that. And the ones in my example I have set up, one is just a variable, and that's just global.coins. I'm going to set that equal to 0. This is obviously just the coin count we have. And just for demonstration purposes, my next one was an item inventory, and this was going to be an array. Now this is not going to be a fully fleshed item inventory, obviously. This is just going to be an array where I'm going to store the names of the items, just to use as an example. But this is just to show you that this works with, like I said, other types of data, like arrays and structs. and all that stuff. Okay, so that's the stuff that actually we will have in game. This is going to actually be our coin count, and this is actually our item inventory. You know, maybe you have lives, points, whatever, any other kind of stuff. And now I'm going to set up a struct that is specifically going to help us load our levels whenever we walk from level to level. So I'm going to call this struct global.level data. And this is how you create a struct. You set a variable equal to some open curly brackets, and then you put in your struct data. If you don't know what a struct is, definitely watching my item inventory video would really help you understand what they are and how they can be used. But kind of in a nutshell, a struct is very much like an object, except it doesn't have all the different bells and whistles. You can't manually set a sprite. It doesn't have the different events. It doesn't have all the stuff that comes with making an object in GameMaker, but it can do things like store variables and have the variables in it be manipulated, which is the main thing that objects actually accomplish. That's all games are, it's just manipulating variables, basically. And so a struct is basically just a super, super lightweight object. It's just a really easy way to store tons of information. And so first, I'm going to set a variable, and I'm going to call it just level1, and then you say colon instead of an equal sign to set variables inside of structs. And really, you can just set this to anything right now. So I guess I'll just set it to 0, and then I'm going to put a comma, because you separate out variables that you list in structs with commas. So anyways, what we're going to be doing with this as we go through our game is we are going to turn level1 into a struct in and of itself. So it's also going to have a whole list of data inside of it. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to take a bunch of data from whatever room is level 1, and then we're going to save all that different data into this level 1 variable, and then we're going to do the same for our other levels. This means that just within this level data struct, we will have access to all of the data that we need to load any of our levels, whether it be on the fly, swapping rooms, or just saving all of the level data that we've gone through in the game onto like a save file. So I have 3 main rooms here, and I actually have an initialization room, which is just a room that at the very beginning of the game, I put persistent objects like this in, and then I tell the game to hop to the next level automatically. And basically that's just how I put all my persistent stuff in my game. That way I don't get more than one instance of object save load if I walk out of a room and walk back in or that kind of thing. But anyway, so I have 3 levels here. You saw them in the beginning. Level 1, level 2, and level 3. Pretty self-explanatory. So because I have 3 levels, I'm just going to go ahead and set up all of these. So level 1, level 2, and we got our level 3. All with no data in them right now, but we need to set them up here. So like I said, these 2 are just for demonstration. You probably have a whole bunch of stuff in your own game that's different and doing a bunch of other things. This is the important part right now. So now we're going to make some functions that are specifically for saving the room that we're exiting and loading the room that we're entering. So I'm going to go back into my little save system folder, right click, create, and go down to a script. And I'm just going to call this script save functions, something like that. Okay, so here we are. I'm going to get rid of this empty one. And the first one is for our room saving. And so let's create a new function, and I'm just going to call it save room. Open up our curly brackets, and we're ready to go. So in this save room script, you're going to need to go through any items in your game that would need some kind of saving, some kind of state preservation. So we got coins. We want to keep track whether they should even be there or not. We have our crates. We want to keep track of where we left them after we pushed them around. And then we have our items that we set around to pick up. And so basically how we're going to save and load these things is we are going to grab data like their X and Y positions and maybe anything else that's important for specific stuff. In my case, my items need one more piece of information that's important. And we're going to figure out how many of each one is left in the room, if there are any. So say, for example, we pick up these half of the coins, and we pick up 1 hedgehog. When we walk out of the room and transition to a new one, we want the game to know how many items are left in the room, how many coins are left in the room, how many boxes are left in the room. And then whenever we walk back into the room, what we're actually going to do is we're going to delete all of these savable items, and then we're going to respawn a whole new wave of them that are just in the exact same positions as where we last saved. So let's hop back into that save room function. I'll make this bigger again. Okay, so like I said, first what we want to do is we want to get the number of all of the savable objects in the room. So for example, for the coins, I'm going to say var underscore coin num for coin number, and we'll say that equals our instance number of our object coin. Instance number obviously just returning the literal number of how many coins are left. And before we do the other ones, we can just start with this one. That way we're not keeping up with a bunch of stuff all at once. So the next thing we need to do is we need to create and store a new struct in a local variable. This is going to be the struct that we put all of the data for the savable objects in the room into, and that's going to be the struct that we return to put back into this right here, into these level data variables. So let's do that. Let's say var underscore room struct equal sign, and then set open to the curly brackets. And let me go ahead and comment this out because I didn't, which was dumb. So anyways, the first thing we'll put in this room struct is something to store that number of coins. So let's call this just coin num. Set it how we did before, and we'll just set that to our local variable version of coin num, and then we'll comma. Then the next thing we want to do is I'm going to make something called coin data, and this is going to be an array. So let's go with array create, and the size of this array is going to be our coin num. And the reason we're getting both of these things, when we have this coin num, whenever loading stuff back, we're going to know how many coins that we need. And then this array here, each entry in this array is going to be another instance of this coin, another instance which we have gathered data from, and whenever we are loading, we are feeding data to. So let me show you. Let's go below again, and we're going to say get the data from the different savable objects. And so to get all the data from the coins that we need, we're going to have to loop through each one. So I'm going to call this first section coins because we're going to do other objects. And let's set up a for loop here. For looping through every object, you see what we're doing here. So we'll say for var I equals 0, as long as I is less than our coin num, I++. So we go through each one. And so for each loop, we want to return the instance of that coin. So I'm going to say var underscore inst equals instance find. We're going to look through our object coins, and then we're going to check the loop that we're on. So now that we have this coin, we can take some data from it, and we can put it back into our room struct's coin data array. And if we want to get multiple pieces of data from something, a great way to do that is by storing all of that in a struct like this. So first we're going to access our coin data array. So we're going to have to go with room struct dot coin data. You know, like I said, structs are like objects, so this is how you reference stuff in structs, just like you would with an object. And we're filling out this array right now, so this is going to be the loop that we're on. And now since we're getting a bunch of data for it, we're going to make this a struct. So equals the curly brackets. And I'm actually going to format it like this, and then like this. Okay, so now we can pull data from our inst and store it into this new struct. And like I said, what do we want from our coins? So example again, we'll say all these coins were collected, okay? Just say they're actually gone. So we now know that there are 6 left, and then now we're going to be looping through each one. So let's say the first instance of our coin is this one. So the exact loop we are on right now through our coins in the room, and this instance is, let's say, this coin. The only data we want from it is just where it is, which is our x and y coordinates, which are very, very tiny on the bottom here, or still pretty tiny over here. But you get the picture, because like I said, we're going to wipe them all clean, and then we're just going to put new coins where the uncollected coins were. So let's just pull an x and y value. So for coin data 0, we'll say the x of that coin data will be the same x as our instance that we got. Oops, this. Pretty cool. So we do it with y also, instance.y. And that's actually all the data we need for the coins, like I said. So anytime we would call the save room function, we gather all the data that we need from any coins that would be in that room, if there are any. Because if there aren't any, then this loop just won't happen because I will already be equal to 0. And great. Now before we actually add in using this function somewhere, we need to make sure that this only applies to a specific room. So like I said, we have this level data struct here with, currently empty variables, and that's where we need to save our now filled out room struct. So I'm going to say store the room specific struct in global.levelData's variable meant specifically for that level. Bit of a mouthful, but descriptive enough, I think. And for me, the easiest way to sort of automate all of this and make sure I don't have to make any weird arguments for this or any specific objects or anything, I'm just going to say if my room is equal to my room level 1, then I'm going to set global.levelData dot level 1 as that room struct. So if I'm in level 1 and I call this save function, then it will save all this data we gathered from that room into the level 1 variable from our level data, which will now be a struct, this struct. And so now I'm just going to go ahead and do it for the other levels as well. And so yeah, you would just do this for any level in your game, any room in your game specifically. And so that way we have this one big struct with just all of the level data for the whole game in it in each one of these. And obviously you don't have to name them levels, you name them whatever you want. I would name them something pretty similar to the room, so that way I would just be able to keep track of it better. But okay, so the saving, at least of the coins right now, is done. Now I can't really demonstrate the saving by itself, but luckily the loading is really easy. So I'm going to minimize our save room here, and then I'm going to create a new function and just call it load room, surprisingly enough. And just like how the last thing we needed to do with the save room was to store all this data here, the first thing we need to do before we can load anything is get that data back. So let's once again set a var room struct, except this I'm just going to put a 0, empty. Because now we're going to do the same thing that we did with the saving, and we're going to check this based on our rooms. So let's say get the correct struct for the room you're in. So if our room is equal to room level 1, then we can set our room struct to be our global.levelData.level1. And now we have that data back. Again, I did it for all the levels in the game that I have. So now we just need to get rid of all the coins that are in the room by default and then replace them with coins that have all the data that we have from our struct. And just as a little safety net, we want to make sure that our room struct is actually a struct, because we could miss something over here and it could still be equal to 0 or whatever. So before we actually try and do anything with it, so let's just say exit if room struct isn't a struct. Let's get some grammar going right there. And we could do that with a pretty literal function, which is struct. So we'll say if room struct is not a struct, then we will exit. This is about as literal as you're probably ever going to get when it comes to just programming a sentence. But anyways, back to the coins. So, coins. I wrote out get rid of the default room editor coins, then create new coins with all the data we previously saved. So first we'll check if any exist. So if instance exists, object coin, then we'll destroy all of them just with instance destroy. Get rid of them, and then we'll do another for loop, exactly the same as the other one that we did. And this time we get our coin number from our room struct. So we'll say room struct dot coin num. This is why we saved the specific number of the coins that remained in the room. And then all we need to do is just create a new coin at the coordinates that we have. So instance create layer, and now we just need to access each individual coin data that we have. So coin data of the loop that we're on, and we saved X and Y's to that coin data, so we just need to get the X of whatever that coin was and get the Y data of it. We'll just say create it to the same layer and then just put an object coin right there. And that's it for the loading. Okay, so I'm just making one more check. I'm going to move some stuff around, collect some things, and then walk out, walk back in. Everything is not resetting correctly. So, okay, we are now ready to add in our save room and load room. So let's go into our object save load, our persistent object, and we're going to add a room start and a room end event. So I'm going to add event, go down to other. First, I'm going to go to room end. And this is where we're going to save. We're going to save the state of a level only whenever we exit. And in this circumstance, this is just saving the room for the purposes of making sure that there is a persistence whenever you leave and come back. So this one only needs to happen whenever you leave a room. So say save the state of the room we are leaving. And all we have to do is just call our save room function, and we're good to go there. And then we just need to do the opposite for loading. So we go to other, we go to the room start event, and we say load the last state of the room, and we just need to call load game. So whenever we leave the room, it saves everything how it was, and whenever we enter, it immediately restores everything to how it was. Then the last thing we need to do is we just need to drop this object into the game. And like I said, the way I do that, I have a room here called room init, and it's just a blank room where I put a couple objects. I've dropped this is the save load object. I've dropped it in here, and this is just the object that draws the coins and the item inventory on the screen. So this is unrelated. We can get that out of here. Just put it way over here. Yeah, so I dropped my saving load object in here. I made sure that this is the top room in the order, so when the game runs, this is the first thing that runs. And then in the room creation code of this room, I just call room go to next. So then it just drops us down to whatever is under it. That's basically just like a little buffer room where I add things that I would want to basically just work throughout the whole game and not accidentally get duplicated in any ways. Because if you put a persistent object in level 1 and then you walk in and out a bunch, it will just keep creating new instances of that object that will be persistent and they won't go away. At least not on their own. So anyways, that was how I dropped it into the game. Like I said, make sure you do all that right. Make sure you room go to next in the creation code order. And then make sure your rooms are in the correct order, obviously. You probably know all this stuff already, but just in case. So now we have it in the game, and we have the save and loading set up for the room start and end. So now we just need to test it. So I'm going to grab a couple coins, a couple items, and I'm going to push these boxes around a bunch. And now what should happen whenever I walk out and walk back in, the items should all come back. The boxes should go back to where they started, but the coins should look exactly like they do right now. So I'm going to walk out and walk back in. And yes, the coins have successfully saved. Congratulations. We did it. Grab some of these. Go up, go back, and we still did it. Okay, so great. Before we move on to actually saving this stuff to like a file, let's add in our other savable objects. So I'm going to open a save room back up. Now I'm going to do the items. So I'm going to say var item num equals instance count instance number, oopsie, of object item. And now I just need to have the same type of data for that. So I need item num. I need the data for the items. So let's make that array the same way that we did before. Even separate them out like that. Need to loop through our items. Make sure we say I is less than item num, not coin num. Remember, this stuff is important. Don't just go copying and pasting everywhere. You need to retype this every time. That way you can avoid a bunch of really dumb mistakes, I promise. Instance fine. Once again, object item, not object coin or anything else. Right there. Okay, all right. We're going to access item data in the same way that we accessed coin data. And there's one difference with my items. The way I have the items set up is like this. So these are not 3 different items with a similar parent. These are all actually the same exact item. But in the level editor, I switch out the animation frames. So it just doesn't animate, and I just pick which item it is up front based on the image index that I input. And then in the code, I have a name variable, and I set a little alarm for a frame after its creation. And then from there, I determine what the name, basically what the information of the item should be based on what image I have over there. And then I tell it not to animate. So another piece of information that is important for me to get for my items is also the image index that it's displaying. Now you might be asking, why didn't I set this stuff up in the creation code directly? Well, it's because whenever we create these items dynamically, any other properties that we add to them afterwards will run after this creation code event. So if for this one, for instance, is image index 1, if I created this dynamically and said it needed to have an image index of 1, if all of this name code was in the creation event, it would be created. Its image index would be 0 by default, so it would call itself ice cream, and then it would change it to look like hedgehog, but the name wouldn't change to hedgehog. So I set it up in a little alarm. Like this. But if you want it all to be in the creation code, you could just also add name as something that you want to save over here. So anyways, so mostly the same. We want the X and the Y. I know this probably doesn't pertain at all to your project, but I appreciate you watching this part so you can just learn the different applications, because this will help, I promise. So anyways, need to make a new thing. I'm going to call this just image, and then that's going to be the instances image index. And like I said, if I just wanted to manually save the name over here, I could just do name instance.name. But I don't need that information right now. Okay, so I've set up all the saving stuff for the items, and now I need to set up the loading stuff, which will be very similar to this. Okay, so here I've done basically the same thing. I checked if any items existed. If they did, I destroyed them. Then I looped through all of them using the item num for the loop, and then I got the room struct item data array, got the X and Y value from that. And now what I need to do is I need to make sure that that image index is correct. So instead of just leaving it at this, I'm going to use with this and open up my curly brackets here. So instance create layer is returning this new instance that we're creating. Then I'm going to say with this new instance, I'm going to say my image index needs to be that image variable that we got. So we need to access that in the same way that we did before. So room struct, we are going to get that from our item data of this current for loop, and we named that variable image. So we're doing the same thing, except we are also changing the image index with this new information. And this is how you would create an object with any other data that you need aside from, just simple X and Y. Again, this is where I would put the name equals room struct, blah, 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 blah. And so now I'm going to test the items really quick. Picked up some coins, picked up 3 of the items here, and walk out, and perfect. But let's check, make sure if I pick this up, does it actually say hedgehog still? Yes, it does. All right, well, I basically just included that one as a separate example just so I could show you doing other information that wasn't just X and Y. So I'm going to go ahead and add in my push block, and you can go ahead and add in any other data that you need to for saving your rooms. And then we can move on to the actual saving to files and then loading the files. So meet me back here right now. Okay, so now we've basically just made our own room persistence, and we just need to actually save and load. So go watch part 2 for that. It's already up. And don't forget to, like the video and subscribe to the video, okay?